So let's move on to the Marius situation because that again that's been super wild, to be quite honest. And it's one of those things where it's just getting and the CO Korg, which I should probably go with the Norwegian outlets a bit more, but I feel like to a certain extent I kind of like some of the more, you could call it, gossipy outlets a bit better here, because my understanding is that in some situations the national, or you could call it more mainline publications, are a little bit more hesitant to go into some of the details here, and reputable people talk to this publication quite a bit, so I think it's so important to go over. But so if you don't know, because it's been a while, so let's do sort of a revamping of what it looks like for this particular Marius situation. So he was arrested in early August of 2024, and he was arrested for assault and domestic violence and, I think, property damage, basically. Those were his initial charges, and they related to a woman who could be considered his girlfriend, although that's kind of debated because I think she didn't want to be referred to as his girlfriend, like more like a friend or something. So, anyways, I imagine they were in some sort of relationship, but she didn't want to totally go down that route. Anyways, so he was arrested for that. And then at the time, he had done the whole like violent situation, and it was like 2 or something in the morning. And then he left the residence, and they didn't arrest him until I think it was the next day, out in front of, like, I believe it was like his old, basically, elementary school. It's the school where he went and his siblings went. And it was arranged, so he sort of gave himself up. And there is sort of an interesting detail to note, which is that at the time, his mom actually came over to his house to pick it up before the arrest. And he said later at some point that his SIM card disappeared between some point early in the morning and then after, and wasn't there when he was arrested, and that, you could kind of inference his mom had something to do with it. I don't know if that's true, but that's almost like he's almost throwing his mom under the bus because that was his story. So he was arrested, and he was given a restraining order against this woman. He contacted her again. And and this is always seemingly what happens, because one arrest happens and one kind of chink in the armor occurs, more and more people came out, and they found more and more women who had been impacted by Marius and his behavior. And this is sort of interesting. So here's the article. And it basically, and this is a Norwegian publication, so it's Google Translate. So it obviously isn't totally perfect. It says the videos that could bring him down. It says the investigation took a dramatic turn when all the material in the Hoiby case was examined. The police believe that Marius walked right into his own trap. So if you don't know as well, Marius is the stepson of the future king. So that's Crown Prince Haakon. Crown Prince Haakon married Mette-Marit, who is Marius's mother. She was a single mother at the time. Sorry, reading and listening at the same time. Who are we talking about, Brittany? Yes. So this is Marius. This is the son of Norway's crown princess. So he's not in the line of succession. He's not a member of the royal family. His mom was a single mother when she married Haakon. And so Marius, though, through the periphery, is sort of, he's part of the family. He was, as far as I'm aware, mostly was raised with Mette-Marit and Haakon. He obviously spends time with his biological father. And so this case started just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And Marius has had problems for years that I believe, this is my personal opinion, the palace has been mostly aware of and covering up for a long time. So the sort of kind of information we got throughout this investigation, I covered it a lot this summer, but as they were kind of still doing the investigation, like, information sort of petered out. But this is sort of the big kind of reveal, like they did a whole press conference of what they're going to charge him with and everything like that. But what came out is that for Marius, he was throwing parties at his parents' house. So this is a royal residence, which is protected by the country, basically. So it's taxpayer funded. He would have big parties there, and items from the home would be taken. There was a silver set that somebody tried to sell at an auction house that the auction house got suspicious of and was returned to the royal family. And then the other big thing that we know for sure, I'm sure a lot of other stuff was taken and it hasn't gotten reported, is that a petrol card was stolen. So this was a card for gas, specifically for the royals, for their official engagements, and covered by the taxpayers. And that card was used, I think, almost, if I remember correctly, for about a year until they finally figured out that somebody had stolen it and was using it improperly. So you have so much going on here. And he has like trashed the place that he lives in on his parents' residence. I think there's a video of a friend of his like having a hoverboard zooming around his parents' home. So this, you can only see the back of his head, but that's him and one of his former girlfriends. And somebody's like in their house. It looks pretty trash because he's had parties there. And actually, one of the women in this case, and it goes in detail here and says there's about 10 women who are included in this case, is that there was video evidence of her assault on his phone and she had no idea that it was there or that any of it had happened. So it's sort of a big deal. And Chris says, and Chris is from Sweden, so she's kind of more closer to some of this, says, in some ways, Marius is a pseudo-royal. His biological dad has a past. Marius is not in the line of succession, but given prominence in the media since the day his single mom married the crown prince. Yes, and his father spent time in jail for, I think it was drug trafficking, if I remember correctly. And there were a lot of questions at the time of their marriage, Mette-Marit and Hakan, about how extensive her drug past was. And so there's a lot going on here. And definitely for sure as well, Marius was well known for associating with the criminal element in Oslo and in Norway. He was well known for associating with the criminal element. And so he has a lot of criminal connections. Like they actually brought him in for a separate case because they were trying to get him to roll over on some of his quote unquote friends because they were criminals, such bad criminals that the police were officially investigating and hoping this guy could give them some more information because he was so close to them. And there were like Hell's Angels that were brought to the royal residence that his mother met. And so this is huge. This is just like, this is the worst, I think, royal scandal really, really in modern times. This truly is, because there is a huge question of how much did Mette-Marit and Hakan know about his behavior? How much of that impacted his younger siblings, including the future queen, Ingrid Alexandra? And at an event for her 18th birthday, she said, and I think somebody pulled out the quote of Marius, basically that he was so loyal to his friends, his criminal friends. And so how much have his younger siblings associated with the criminal element he associates himself with? And how much, I would imagine in some ways it impacts more his younger brother Magnus than it does. I always can't pronounce his name right. Sir Magnus. It's like, how much does it affect him versus Ingrid Alexandra? And they've done a lot to kind of try to even like downplay Hakan and Mette-Marit in some of the Norwegian social media because this situation is so bad, and it is truly horrible. And it actually came at a terrible time for the Norwegian royals because Marius's arrest happened the same month as Princess Martha Louise's marriage to a very controversial American shaman dude who, claims that people don't like him for issues of racism when he's just kind of creepy and weird, in my personal opinion. That's just my personal opinion. He like has, he's sort of a guru, but like some of his healing, requires sexual contact with men and women. So, take that for what you will. I think that's a little weird. So anyways, let's go over some of what this shares here. And again, this is, guys, a translation from Google Translate. So it might not be flawless, but this does help us actually read some of this information about other royals. So CEO Korg was able to reveal an overview of all 10 women who at the time of the status of the offended had the status of offended in the extensive investigation by Oslo's police. So there are 10 women wrapped up within this case who are given the status of offended. So that means that he has offended them. Now, obviously, offense can mean a lot of things, but this is particularly regarding the situation with Marius. And so it says an investigation has now been completed where the police plan to bring charges against one and the same man, Crown Princess Mette-Marit's son, Marius Borg Hoiby. And again, because he's lived this life of immense privilege, he's probably gotten away with a lot for many, many years. And this is just now finally sort of catching up with him, this deplorable behavior. And again, I feel like his mom was part of it. It says, but the situation was worse than that because on Friday came the most explosive development in the case since he was first arrested last summer. Marius has been charged with a total of 23 offenses, including the R word here, which I cannot say because YouTube tends to demonetize things, but you can see it right there. Abuse in close relationships, sexual assault, and violence of a restraining order. And one of the stories that we got out of this case as the whole investigation has been going on is that there was an actual situation of Marius being, it sounds like physical with one of his girlfriends on the royal yacht. And he was being disruptive to such an extent that his mother had to go down and talk him down. And so this is not a one-time thing. This is in my opinion, from what I can tell, a long series of patterns of behavior that was never I don't think properly mitigated by his parents. He has claimed to have like drug abuse. I think after he was arrested, it came out that he was his blood alcohol level was high. I think he had marijuana in his system and maybe cocaine as well. And he admitted to drug use. He allegedly went to, I mean, he did technically go to a drug rehab in December, but like only stayed a couple of days left and then came back. So like this, and he was recently in Cannes around the film festival. So this is a guy who is not, I don't think, in he's not a guy who I feel like, according to what I can tell, and this is again is my very humble opinion, has not taken any of this very seriously and has no desire to adjust his behavior. So this is one of his ex-girlfriends who's also, you know, shared that she dealt with this behavior by him. And there was one case as well, I can't remember which girlfriend it was, who like her mom and like they were trying to talk to Hakan and Mette-Marit about this behavior by him. And so I think Hakan and Mette-Marit knew a lot and had been covering for him for a long time. And I understand trying to a certain extent figure out how to help somebody, let's say, who's in the middle of a drug crisis. But this is not drugs. This is not just drugs. This is violence against women, like a pattern of behavior of violence towards women. And that's something to me completely different and completely like I understand if he's dealing with drug related issues that you want to help him. I 100% get that. And you want to keep it quiet. I do get that. But that's not this. This is a guy who's basically all his friends are criminals and he brings criminals to your home. He brings multiple criminals to your home where they steal things from you. And he's violent against women. One of them allegedly happened in their home in the basement. And so it's like, you guys bear a lot here. I'm sorry. The unfortunate thing for them is that because so much of this happened on their property, that they can't remove themselves from it. They are complicit in one way or another. So, anyways, it says the police have conducted a thorough investigation with a large number of witness interviews, several searches and an extensive review of digital materials. The investigation is now complete, the police attorney said. There's now talk of double-digit number of victims, and if the police charges hold up in court, the punishment could be severe. So this is another one of his former girlfriends. We're talking about many years in prison if he is convicted of all of this. So this is not like, oh, he's one and done and stuff like that. Like we're talking about a lot of years in prison here. And the investigation to Marius has been a demanding exercise for the Oslo police district from day one, not least because the accused is a member of the extended royal family. So this is another video here of him and looks like alleged girlfriend. But CO Korg, and I've been told that that's mostly how you pronounce it, has been informed that Marius's own actions is what gave the police the opportunity to really send the extensive investigation into a decisive direction. And I would say overtime, because he couldn't stop himself. He had to contact his victim. And yes, my understanding is that she was not she was kind of hesitant about the in some ways the I don't think she was super interested in the restraining order, but that was part of the process is like there was an official restraining order and he would like continue to contact her. And so his second arrest, because he's been arrested, I believe, twice. I mean, obviously, a lot more of the investigation is still going on, but he's been arrested twice. The second one was for violating the restraining order. And he was like literally on a hunting trip with his friends. So, like, there were probably guns and there was like a criminal there, pretty sure too. So, it's like this guy I am totally for people who are seeking, trying to help themselves, seeking redemption, stuff like that. That guy's not here. That I do not see that behavior yet. So goes on to say the police believe that Marius set a trap for himself and walked into it. Among other things, by breaking the restraining order against his ex-girlfriend, he gave investigators the opportunity they could hardly dream of. So because he violated the restraining order, they were able to conduct divisive searches or more extensive searches, and then so they could go straight in and retrieve all the material, including Hoiby's own phones, PCs, and hard drives will be crucial evidence against him at a possible trial, because the thing is he's recorded some of this, or maybe even a lot of this, which also I think reflects a dangerous pattern of behavior here. Like, very dangerous pattern of behavior. Like, this is something you should take very seriously. This is not just like a one-time crime of opportunity. Like, if he's especially filming himself quite a bit, this is somebody who has a pathology here. So this is definitely something that needs to be wholly addressed. And Chris is right. Marius needs serious consequences. It might be the only way to wake him up. Like, seriously, there's his parents cannot save him here. I think they honestly need to distance themselves from him pretty seriously. I understand trying to still help him, but yeah. And then Trine says, "Hi, as a Norwegian, I'm so embarrassed by our royal house, not only Marius, but his aunt, Martha Louise, and her husband." Yeah, it was actually so bad for the royals because everybody loves Harold and Sonia. They love their love story. And you had that situation with Marius, and it was a risk. And somebody mentioned this, and I actually forgot to finish my thought about this, that one of the reasons, and you kind of understand, is that the situation with the Mette-Marit shows, although I am fully on board with the idea of a royal marrying a single mom, I'm okay with that. I don't really have an issue with that. But what he said, and I think it's incredibly true, or whoever said this, is that this is sort of why you marry someone as a royal who doesn't really have much of a past, because then you don't have to deal with this. Mette-Marit had quite a past. And yeah, she's been able to reform her image, but based on the behavior of her son, you just got to wonder and question how much of his behavior has been influenced and impacted by her, and how much has she indulged his behavior, because let's say she just has a different threshold for that kind of thing. And that's I totally I get that. It might seem very antiquated, but I sort of get that based on this situation. Now, I think it's difference between a single mom who obviously whose partner and father of the child was a drug dealer. I mean, that definitely raised a lot of red flags, guys. At the time when they got married, Hakan and Mette-Marit, they were very, like, huge red flags were raised, and there were so many questions about her past and how much they had kind of, you could say, kind of tried to soften it. And like, because of her boyfriend, Marius's father, being arrested for drug trafficking, how much was she involved in that? Big questions. And like, it's just you just see this all play out, and you're just like, wow, is so incredibly sad. And I totally get it. I totally get the question of, maybe it's something. Azima says, "Will Crown Princess Mette-Marit and Hakan divorce?" No, they are actually madly in love. They are pretty madly in love, and so I don't think that's it. But I understand as well why there's some wisdom in the idea of, hey, don't marry somebody who has other situations. Oh, and the other thing is, so Blue Ella said, there's a case of Marius back in 2017 related to drug charges. And there was also a situation too where that through this investigation, it was sort of revealed publicly that he has a diplomatic passport. So you can have all of us mostly have regular passports. I don't know any diplomats on here who have a diplomatic one, but you can have diplomatic visas. So I did an internship with the State Department. And I actually had a diplomatic visa. Did not have a normal situation or whatever. But when Marius' situation, he has a normal passport and a diplomatic passport. So that's beyond just a visa. He has a passport. And so as he is, let's say, going through a country, and let's say he has some troubles, he'll sometimes go in, this was allegedly, go in on his regular passport, exit on his diplomatic passport. So he is only supposed to use his diplomatic passport if he's traveling with his parents. But if he's not, he's supposed to use a regular one. And he was using his diplomatic one. And a diplomatic passport can give you certain immunities in particular countries. And so if he was using his diplomatic one, it's a very, again, concerning his behavior. And again, you just got to wonder, and people are wondering, how much of this is impacting the next generation, which is his siblings? How much are they associated with it? How much are they aware of it? Like, was he bringing around his criminal friends to them? And, oh, that's a scary thought. It says, in practice, he opened the door to himself, to the police, giving almost free access to what could prove to be incriminating evidence. These are pictures and photos that will be difficult to fight against. Because it's one thing, he said, she said. You kind of have to go with whoever you believe more and who is ever most probable in that particular situation. But if they have a lot of like physical evidence, like videos and pictures of him doing something inappropriate, and they contact the women, they go, I have no clue that happened at all. This is looking like a very solid case. And again, because of who they're dealing with, I imagine this is a very solid case. So that's funny because his head is not in frame, but that's one of his girlfriends. And they've been informed by somebody who knows him well. The material contains images and video clips of a partly graphic nature and shows both identifiable and non-identifiable women. It is intended to document, among other things, serious sexual offenses. So again, I go back to this idea, guys, that this is a level of pathology that is very, very concerning. Like, it's one thing when you have people with the crime of opportunity and they have a lapse in judge, like that. Not excusing anything at all, but like you can kind of understand there's difference between like in this, which is a pathological level of behavior. If you are videoing it, if you're trying to gather evidence, not evidence, but if you, well, like, almost trophies of your crime, kind of serial killer type level. It's like he's collecting trophies to look back on later. That's what you could read into this. Again, I don't know anything, but yeah, it's very concerning. So the extensive work has naturally taken an extra long time for the police department. And again, I feel like they've done probably a more thorough investigation than they would have usually done considering who they're dealing with. And the police are said to have seized evidence, including from Hoiby State at Sagum and at several locations in Oslo. So that's on his parents' property. One of the most central allegations in the case is several women, according to aid lawyers, have never consented to the recordings. So this, like, if they never consented to the recordings, again, huge deal here. One of the women who thought she had been summoned to the police to talk about her friendship with Marius was shown the video she didn't know existed. What she saw was degrading, and he was the one who filmed it, says a source. So that's not a great screenshot, but that is his mom there. Thus, it was he himself who, by breaking a restraining order, made it possible for the police to obtain what has become the core evidence in the case. All the points included in the comprehensive indictment that is now being submitted to the Oslo State Attorney's Office were presented at a press conference on Friday. So this is the police prosecutor. So they presented it to, I probably maybe phrased it a bit wrong when I was doing some trying to do a short yesterday, but so these are the charges the police say these are the ones that are prosecutable, and they've submitted them to the attorney's office basically. And they're like, these are the strongest ones. I'm sure they had more they could consider, but these are the ones that made the most sense. And so that they have submitted them. And so we had the first two here. I just won't say, because again, YouTube reasons, which I find somewhat annoying, because if you're trying to talk about news and you're prevented from saying certain things, it makes it sort of challenging. So we have 4 cases of sexually offensive behavior, 1 case of abuse of close relationships. And so there's 3 cases here. So these are the 3 most serious right here. 1 case of abuse in close relationships, 2 cases of bodily harm, 1 case of damage, 1 case of threats, 5 violations of restraining order, 1 case of harassment of a police officer, 5 road traffic violations. And it still remains to be seen how many of the cases the state attorney general will actually choose to prosecute. But this is looking, again, very, very serious. State Attorney Sherla has been given a responsibility for further assessment. And if it is an experienced man who will put all the investigative material under the magnifying glass, Henriks Bo is the same man who was the prosecutor in the mass shooting case after the Pride attack in Oslo in 2022. So Seagor and a number of Norwegian international media outlets have followed the investigation ever since the case exploded on August 4th of last year. On the same morning of the dramatic night, his ex-girlfriend, same age as Frogner, Marius Borg, was arrested by a police patrol outside the main gate of the Crown Prince and Princess's estate in Sagwam. Marius Borg himself acknowledged the events that night through his then lawyer. So yeah, he did make a statement. So this is where Marius has been living, is my understanding, and this is his parents' home. So, and he has basically like trashed this place, is my understanding as well. And yeah, so yeah, he admitted to like the violence and alcohol and cocaine that he had taken. I think they found marijuana in his system too, because they did do some sort of blood test. And he says, I have struggled with substance abuse for a long time, something I have been treated for in the past. I will now resume treatment and take it very seriously, which is why you walked out on it. So yeah, no, he's just surprised he got caught. And so there was a different lawyer on the case initially, but then he changed to his attorney to Ellen here. And she said the police have conducted a very thorough investigation, most of which has been dropped. They investigated a number of victims who have not been known. There are between 15 and 20 victims. Well, that doesn't sound like, anything to scoff at here. Like, if there was just one, you could have a pretty decent way of kind of moving things in a different direction. But with all those victims, that's a lot. Seagor would like to emphasize Hoiby apparently has a completely different version of the events. He is said to have explained his story during questioning and will likely come to light if he is indicted. Only if the court in a possible trial concludes after the evidence has presented, he is guilty beyond all reasonable doubt, he will be sentenced. He has the right to be treated as innocent until a final verdict has been proven. So let's see if there's anything else here that might be sort of interesting. But yeah, I mean, I understand innocent until proven guilty, but it's a pretty, this is not like anything to scoff at. If this was like one case, and that would be okay. So this is one of the women who they found evidence of her assault, I think, on his phone. Let's see. So this is her initial statement. I was just thinking if she had anything else new that she had stated. So she says, "You're truly kind to me. I have 8 unanswered messages from the press, plus a few more. I'm not in the best of shape, so I choose not to comment on today's news." So that is what she shared regarding the situation. But I can say I'm furiously angry that I was dragged into this 100% involuntarily because of evidence on the person's phone, which the person himself took while I was not conscious. She does not hide the fact that it's been a challenging process because of what the person has put me through. I have had to go through so much exhausting stuff and have to go through a lot more, which is honestly mentally draining before I can put this 100% behind me for good. Nobody deserves this. Who the hell wants this kind of press or attention? The last thing I wanted or thought would happen to me. So that's what we have. There's him and his mom. So urgent call. So now I am curious what this one says. Urgent call. The police provided new information. Okay, in the criminal case. So that is sort of the situation with Marius. And we'll see where this goes, but like I would imagine this has been a very thorough investigation. And so if you're the prosecutor looking at these charges, I mean, granted there are consequences to pursuing this case for them legally, like the Norwegian prosecutor. I'm sure there would be consequences. And so I'm sure there's a big question of where do I go here? Where do I go here? And I'm not sure, like there's not an easy answer to this particular situation. And this, I pray that, of course, justice is served. Justice, of course, in our world is not perfect by any means, but this is a guy I think who has been spiraling for a really, really long time. And I think in part because I do feel bad for him in a way because his mom and dad both remarried and they had other children. And so he is kind of where he's kind of in between two families and not really part of one at the same time because he doesn't have really his own. And so I do feel sorry for him in that way because I feel like that kind of drains you in some ways, and there might be some genetic predisposition to some of his behavior. And at the same time as well, I think there is a question, of course, of parenting, and this again reflects on Mette-Marit and Hakan. What was their parenting like in this situation? And does this extend to their children as well? And I think probably Marius was sort of overindulged. I think my guess in his psychology is that he was overindulged because he is not a royal, but yet not part of the whole system. And so I think he is kind of sort of here and there, if that makes sense. So we do have those some clarification from Chris here, who again is in Sweden. So Sweden and Norway are very, very close. And Chris says he must receive judgment before his victims can make claims for compensation, which sort of makes sense. In the United States too, sometimes people, if they don't feel like they got the judgment they wanted in the criminal courts, like this is the case, especially in the O.J. Simpson case, if you're not aware. So the O.J. Simpson case was a huge case in the 90s, like massive. Guys, the verdict was so big. And yes, I was living in Southern California, but not Los Angeles. And the verdict was so huge because the news story was so huge. They literally announced the verdict over the loudspeaker of my elementary school. I remember exactly where I was on the playground where they made the announcement. And so he was found not guilty, O.J. Simpson, of the murder of Nicole Brown Simpson and I'm gonna say his name was Goldstein. I can't remember. I can't remember his other name. Anyways, and so because he was found not guilty though, the Goldstein family, I want to say it's Goldstein. I feel so bad. I don't feel like I'm remembering it. And they actually sued O.J. Simpson in civil court case and won a huge monetary judgment against him. And I don't even know if they ever really got to collect, quote unquote. And that wasn't really the point. It was just a way to, because O.J. Simpson was trying to get around paying it and stuff for a long time too. But it was a way for them to sort of get a bit out of him. Anyways, so that is sort of wrapping up the Mario situation. Again, I will be still watching this.